The late 19th century saw the rise of Jewish nationalism known as Zionism. This movement was a response to centuries of anti-Semitism and persecution in Europe. Zionists sought a Jewish homeland, and their eyes turned towards Palestine. This ancient land held deep religious and historical significance for the Jewish people. Early Zionist pioneers began immigrating to Palestine in the late 1800s. They purchased land and established agricultural communities. This influx, however, created tension with the existing Arab population. Arabs felt their homeland was being encroached upon. They resisted what they saw as a threat to their way of life. This clash of national aspirations, Jewish and Arab, laid the foundation for a century of conflict. The struggle for land and self-determination became increasingly intertwined. It set the stage for a complex and tragic struggle that continues to this day. Following World War I, the Ottoman Empire, which had ruled Palestine for centuries, collapsed. The League of Nations granted Great Britain a mandate over Palestine in 1920. The British were tasked with creating a Jewish homeland while also protecting Arab rights. This proved to be a difficult balancing act. Jewish immigration to Palestine increased, especially during the rise of Nazi Germany. This led to further resentment and unrest among the Arab population. The British found themselves caught between these competing claims. Violence erupted periodically, targeting both British authorities and Jewish communities. The most significant of these was the Arab Revolt of 1936 to 1939. This rebellion against British rule and Jewish immigration further polarized the region. It demonstrated the deep-seated resentment and the growing desire for independence on both sides. In 1947, the United Nations proposed partitioning Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab. Jerusalem was to be placed under international control. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan, but the Arab world rejected it, seeing it as unjust. War broke out almost immediately after Britain withdrew in May 1948. The surrounding Arab states joined the conflict, aiming to prevent the establishment of Israel. This conflict, known as the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, resulted in a decisive victory for Israel. The war also led to a humanitarian catastrophe. More than 700,000 Palestinians fled or were expelled from their homes. This mass displacement, known as the Nakba or catastrophe, created a lasting wound in the Palestinian psyche. It remains a central issue in the conflict to this day. Section 4. The Six-Day War and its aftermath. Tensions remained high in the decades following the 1948 war. In 1967, another major conflict erupted, the Six-Day War. This war, sparked by a series of escalating border clashes, resulted in a swift Israeli victory. Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Golan Heights, and Sinai Peninsula. This victory dramatically altered the regional map and further complicated the conflict. The occupation of Palestinian territories and the expansion of Israeli settlements became major points of contention. The displaced Palestinian population continued to grow, living in refugee camps in neighboring countries. Palestine Liberation Organization, formed in 1964, gained prominence. It advocated for Palestinian self-determination and engaged in armed struggle against Israel. Section 5. A legacy of violence and the search for peace. The decades that followed witnessed a cycle of violence and peace efforts. The First Intifada, a Palestinian uprising that began in 1987, brought the conflict back into sharp focus. It highlighted the plight of Palestinians living under occupation. The Oslo Accords, signed in the 1990s, offered a glimmer of hope. These agreements aimed to establish a framework for peace and a two-state solution. However, the assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in 1995 and the Second Intifada in 2000 dealt severe blows to the peace process. The conflict continues to this day, marked by periodic outbreaks of violence, rocket attacks, and military operations. The construction of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, the status of Jerusalem, and the issue of Palestinian refugees remain major obstacles to peace. Section 6. Hope amidst the ruins. Despite the seemingly intractable nature of the conflict, hope for peace persists. Many individuals and organizations on both sides remain committed to finding a just and lasting solution. They understand that peace requires compromise, empathy, and a commitment to coexistence. The human cost of this conflict has been immense. Countless lives have been lost and generations have been scarred by violence and displacement. It is a stark reminder of the human toll of hatred and the urgent need for reconciliation. The path to peace is arduous, but the alternative, continued bloodshed and suffering, is simply unacceptable.